Hello, my friends. Today I want to talk about something different from what we have discussed before. Today is not about one technique. It is not about 10 minutes of this or 10 minutes of that. Today I want to give you something bigger, something complete. I want to give you a full plan, a real plan. 90 days that will take you from where you are right now, an intermediate English speaker who understands a lot but still struggles to express everything you want to say, to a place where English finally feels like yours, where you can think in it, joke in it, argue in it, explain complicated ideas in it, without that constant feeling of fighting against the language. This is the plan I wish someone had given me when I was struggling at that exact stage. The stage where you are not a beginner anymore, but you are not fluent either. The stage that feels, honestly, like the hardest stage of all. So sit down, get comfortable, and let me walk you through 90 days that can change everything. Let me start by telling you why this stage, the intermediate stage, is so dangerous for English learners. When you are a complete beginner, every single day feels like progress. You learn new words constantly. Simple sentences that were impossible last month become easy. The growth is visible, fast, and exciting. But once you reach the intermediate level, something strange happens. The progress slows down. You already know enough to have basic conversations. You already know enough to read simple articles. You already know enough to understand most movies with some effort. And because you have already accomplished so much, the next steps become less obvious. The growth becomes invisible. Many people get stuck here for years, not because they stopped trying, but because they kept doing the same things that got them this far, not realizing that what got you to intermediate will not get you to advanced. You need a different kind of practice now, a different kind of plan. And that is exactly what I want to give you today. Let me tell you about a young woman named Layla. Layla was 27 years old. She had studied English seriously for about 5 years. She could hold a conversation. She could write a reasonably clear email. She could watch English videos and understand most of what was said. By any normal measure, she was doing well. But Layla felt stuck. Every year she told herself, this is the year my English becomes truly fluent. And every year passed, and she felt roughly the same as the year before. A little better maybe, but not the dramatic change she was hoping for. She tried new apps. She tried new books. She tried watching more series. But nothing seemed to push her past that invisible wall. One day, a mentor of hers gave her some advice that changed everything. He said, Layla, you do not have a motivation problem. You do not have an intelligence problem. You have a structure problem. You are doing scattered activities without a real plan. You need 90 days with a clear purpose for each phase, and you need to follow it completely without jumping around. That conversation became the beginning of the plan I am about to share with you. The plan that took Layla from stuck intermediate to genuinely fluent in 3 months. Let us go through it together, phase by phase. The first thing I want you to understand is that this 90-day journey is divided into 3 distinct phases, each lasting 30 days. Each phase has a different purpose. Each phase builds on the one before it. And if you skip a phase or rush through it or do them out of order, the plan will not work as well. So I am asking you, right from the beginning, to trust the process and follow the sequence. Phase 1, the first 30 days, is about rebuilding your foundation and removing your weaknesses. Phase 2, the next 30 days, is about expanding your range and developing real fluency in everyday and professional topics. Phase 3, the final 30 days, is about polishing, refining, and gaining the kind of confidence that allows you to speak naturally in any situation. Let us go deeply into each one. Phase 1 begins with something that might surprise you. It does not begin with learning new things. It begins with identifying what is broken. Most intermediate learners have built their English on a foundation that has small cracks in it. Maybe your grammar is generally fine, but you constantly confuse certain tenses. Maybe your vocabulary is decent, but you have a small set of pronunciation errors that you make every single time. Errors that have become so automatic that you do not even notice them anymore. Maybe you understand spoken English well, but your speaking is full of hesitation and filler sounds. These cracks, if left unaddressed, will limit how far you can go, no matter how much new material you add on top of them. So the first 10 days of phase 1 are dedicated entirely to diagnosis. Here is what I want you to do for the first 10 days. Every day, speak for 5 minutes on any topic and record yourself. At the end of each session, listen back carefully, not casually, but with real attention, and write down every mistake you notice. Grammar mistakes, pronunciation mistakes, moments where you searched for a word and could not find it, moments where your sentence structure felt awkward or directly translated from your native language. Do this for 10 days. By the end of these 10 days, you will have a list, your own personal list, of the specific things that are holding your English back. This list is gold, because most learners try to improve everything at once in a vague, general way. But real improvement comes from fixing specific things. And now you have your specific things. Layla did exactly this. And by day 10, she had a clear list. She realized she constantly confused the present perfect and the simple past. She realized she mispronounced certain vowel sounds in a consistent way. She realized she overused the word basically as a filler word in almost every sentence. These might seem like small things, but small things repeated thousands of times in conversation create a big impression. And identifying them clearly was the first real step toward fixing them. For the next 10 days of phase 1, days 11 through 20, your job is to attack the specific weaknesses on your list one at a time. Do not try to fix everything simultaneously. Choose your biggest weakness, the one that bothers you most or that you notice most often, and spend focused time on it. If it is a grammar issue, find clear explanations, and then, more importantly, practice using that grammar point in your own sentences, out loud, repeatedly, until it starts to feel automatic. If it is a pronunciation issue, find the specific sound that gives you trouble. Listen to native speakers producing that sound many times, and then practice producing it yourself, slowly at first, then at normal speed. If it is a filler word habit, practice speaking and consciously pause in silence instead of using your filler word. This will feel uncomfortable at first. Silence in the middle of a sentence feels strange when you are used to filling it with sound. But that brief silence is far more natural and confident sounding than a repeated filler word, and training yourself to be comfortable with it is incredibly valuable. Layla spent these 10 days focused mainly on her present perfect and simple past confusion because she felt this was her biggest weakness. She found clear, simple examples. She wrote her own sentences. She practiced saying them out loud. She specifically tried to use the present perfect correctly in her daily narration practice. And by day 20, something had shifted. Not perfectly, she still made mistakes sometimes, but the frequency had dropped enormously. What had once been an error in almost every conversation had become an occasional slip. And that improvement, visible and measurable, gave her enormous motivation to continue. The final 10 days of phase 1, days 21 through 30, are about building a stronger foundation in functional language, meaning the practical phrases and expressions that native speakers use constantly in everyday situations. This is different from vocabulary lists of individual words. This is about chunks of language, natural expressions that go together. Things like, I was wondering if, or that being said, or to be honest with you, or I see what you mean, but these functional phrases are the glue of real conversation. Intermediate learners often know enough individual words, but lack the natural connecting phrases that make speech flow smoothly. So during these 10 days, your job is to collect and practice these functional expressions. Watch real conversations and notice these phrases. Write down 10 to 15 of them that feel useful for your life. And then practice using them deliberately in your daily speaking practice until they start appearing naturally without you having to think about them. By the end of phase 1, 30 days in, your foundation should feel noticeably more solid. Your most persistent mistakes should be less frequent. You should have a collection of natural functional phrases that you can use comfortably. And you should have developed the habit, the daily discipline of speaking and reflecting on your own English critically and constructively. This foundation is what makes phase 2 possible. Without it, adding more advanced content on top of unfixed weaknesses is like building a second floor on a cracked foundation. With it, Everything you build next will be much stronger. Now let us move into phase 2, days 31 through 60. If phase 1 was about fixing and stabilizing, phase 2 is about expanding and growing. This is where you dramatically increase your range, your ability to talk about more topics, more situations, more complex ideas with real confidence. This phase is built around what I call topic immersion. Instead of studying English in a general, scattered way, you will go deep into specific topics, one at a time, building real fluency in each one before moving to the next. Here is how this works. You will choose 6 topics, one for each 5-day block within this 30-day phase. These should be topics that matter to your actual life. Maybe one is your professional field. Maybe one is a hobby you love. Maybe one is current events. Maybe one is travel. Maybe one is health and fitness. Maybe one is technology. Choose topics that are genuinely relevant to conversations you actually have or want to have. For each 5-day block, you will immerse yourself completely in that topic, in English, from multiple directions. Let me explain what immersion in a topic actually looks like using an example. Imagine your topic for one block is your professional field. Let us say it is marketing. On day 1 of that block, you read 2 or 3 articles in English about marketing topics that interest you, paying close attention to the specific vocabulary used in that field. You do not try to memorize every word, but you notice the language, the terms, the typical sentence structures used when professionals discuss this topic. On day 2, you listen to a podcast or watch a video of professionals discussing marketing topics, again focusing on absorbing the natural language used. On day 3, you write a short piece, maybe a paragraph or 2, expressing your own opinion about something related to marketing, using some of the vocabulary you have encountered. On day 4, you speak for 10 minutes about marketing, explaining a concept, sharing an opinion, describing a situation from your own professional experience, using the language you have been absorbing for the past 3 days. On day 5, you imagine a realistic conversation scenario related to this topic. Perhaps a meeting, a presentation, or a discussion with a colleague, and you role-play through it, speaking both sides if necessary, practicing exactly the kind of language you would need in that real situation. This 5-day cycle, repeated with a new topic each time, does something remarkable. It builds deep, specific fluency in areas that actually matter to your life, rather than shallow, scattered exposure to random topics that may never come up in your real conversations. After 30 days of this, 6 topics fully immersed, you will have a noticeably wider range. You will be able to discuss your professional field with real fluency. You will be able to talk about your hobbies and interests without searching for words. You will have practiced the specific scenarios that are likely to occur in your actual life. And this targeted, relevant fluency is far more valuable than generic vocabulary that may or may not ever be useful to you. Let me tell you about a man named Tariq who went through this exact phase. Tariq worked in finance, and his topics for phase 2 included his professional field, his passion for cooking, recent technology news, his interest in history, fitness and health, and travel, because he hoped to work internationally one day. He committed fully to each 5-day block. He noticed something interesting as he moved through the topics. The financial topic was the hardest at first, because even though he knew the concepts deeply in his native language, expressing them in English with precision required real effort. But by day 5 of that block, after reading, listening, writing, speaking, and role-playing through realistic scenarios, he found himself explaining complex financial ideas in English with a fluency that surprised him. The cooking topic, by contrast, felt almost effortless and joyful because his passion for the subject carried him through any language gaps naturally. By the end of phase 2, Tariq told me that for the first time, he felt like English was not a separate skill he was practicing, but a tool he was actually using to engage with the things that mattered to him. Now, let us talk about phase 3, the final 30 days, days 61 through 90. This phase is different in character from the first 2. Phase 1 was about fixing weaknesses. Phase 2 was about expanding range. Phase 3 is about integration and polish. This is where everything you have built comes together into something that feels natural, confident, and genuinely yours. This phase has 3 key components that I want to walk you through. The first component of phase 3 is what I call extended conversation practice. Throughout phases 1 and 2, much of your speaking practice has been solo, talking to yourself, recording yourself, narrating, explaining. This was necessary and valuable, especially for building the physical comfort and confidence of speaking English regularly. But in phase 3, it becomes essential to spend significant time in real conversation with other people. If you have access to conversation partners, whether through language exchange platforms, online communities, friends, or colleagues, this is the time to use them intensively. I recommend aiming for at least 3 real conversations per week during this final phase, each one at least 20 to 30 minutes long. These conversations should not be scripted or overly structured. They should be genuine exchanges, discussing real topics with real back and forth, real listening, real adapting to what the other person says. This is where you practice the parts of fluency that solo practice cannot fully replicate: the spontaneity, the social dynamics, the need to listen carefully and respond appropriately in real time. If you genuinely do not have access to conversation partners, do not worry. You can still make significant progress, but I want you to simulate conversation as closely as possible. Watch interview-style content where you can pause after each question and answer out loud as if you were the person being interviewed, before unpausing to hear the real answer and comparing it to yours. This forces a kind of responsive, real-time thinking that pure narration practice does not. It is not the same as a real conversation, but it builds similar mental muscles. The second component of phase 3 is what I call complexity stretching. By this point in your 90-day journey, you have built solid fluency in everyday and topic-specific conversation. Now it is time to deliberately stretch yourself toward more complex forms of expression. This means practicing things like expressing nuanced opinions, where you acknowledge multiple sides of an issue before stating your own view. It means practicing hypothetical language, talking about what you would do if certain things were true, what might have happened if past events had gone differently. It means practicing persuasive language, where you build an argument and try to convince someone of your perspective. It means practicing storytelling with more sophisticated structure, building tension, using descriptive language, creating a satisfying narrative arc rather than just listing events in order. These are the kinds of language skills that separate intermediate fluency from genuinely advanced, sophisticated communication. And dedicating focused practice time to them during phase 3 pushes you toward that higher level. A practical way to do this is to choose 2 or 3 times a week a complex prompt and respond to it out loud for several minutes. Prompts like, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing your generation and why? Or, if you could change one decision from your past, what would it be and how do you think your life would be different? Or, convince me why people should or should not use social media as much as they do. These kinds of prompts force you beyond simple description and into genuine, complex reasoning and expression, in English, under time pressure, which is exactly the kind of practice that builds advanced fluency. The third component of phase 3, and perhaps the most important, is what I call identity integration. This is harder to describe than the other components, but it might be the most transformative part of the entire 90 days. Identity integration means consciously starting to think of yourself, to identify yourself as an English speaker, not as someone learning English. This shift sounds subtle, but it has enormous psychological power. Throughout most of your English journey, you have probably thought of yourself as a learner, someone working toward a goal, someone who is not yet there. And this self-concept, while motivating in some ways, can also hold you back, because part of you is always waiting for some future moment when you will finally become a real English speaker. Phase 3 is when I want you to recognize that moment has already arrived, or is arriving right now, through these 90 days of dedicated work. I want you to start during this final phase consciously using language about yourself that reflects this shift. Instead of thinking, I am trying to improve my English, think, I am someone who speaks English. Instead of apologizing excessively for small mistakes, accept that fluent speakers make mistakes too, in every language, including their native one, and that mistakes do not disqualify you from being a real speaker. Instead of mentally translating and then judging whether your English was good enough after every sentence, trust the foundation you have built over these 90 days and let yourself simply communicate the way a confident speaker does. This shift in self-perception is not just a nice feeling. It has real, measurable effects on performance. People who see themselves as capable speakers take more conversational risks, recover more gracefully from mistakes, and ultimately sound more fluent, not because their grammar is suddenly perfect, but because their confidence allows the language they have built to flow more freely. Layla, the young woman I told you about earlier, experienced this most clearly in Phase 3. She told me that around day 75, something shifted that she could not fully explain through grammar or vocabulary. She was in a conversation with a colleague, and instead of her usual internal monologue, worrying about whether her English was good enough, she simply was not thinking about it at all. She was thinking about the conversation itself, about what she wanted to say, about listening to what her colleague was sharing. The language had become transparent. It was not something she was managing anymore. It was simply how she was communicating. And she said that feeling, more than any specific grammar point or vocabulary word she had learned, was what told her she had genuinely become fluent. Now I want to talk about something important that applies across all 90 days. Something that determines whether this plan actually works for you or becomes just another abandoned attempt. And that is consistency over intensity. I have given you a detailed plan with specific activities for each phase. But I want to be honest with you about something. Life happens. Some days you will be tired. Some days you will be busy. Some days you simply will not feel motivated. And on those days, the temptation will be to skip your practice entirely, telling yourself you will make up for it tomorrow or catch up at the end of the week. I want to strongly encourage you to resist this temptation, but in a specific way. Rather than doing your full plan session or nothing at all, commit to a minimum viable version of your daily practice on difficult days. If your plan called for 15 minutes of speaking practice and you simply cannot find that time or energy, do 3 minutes instead. If your plan called for reading 2 articles, read just a few paragraphs of one. The goal on difficult days is not to make significant progress. It is simply to maintain the unbroken chain of daily practice. Because the psychological power of an unbroken streak, of being able to say, I have shown up every single day for 60 days, 70 days, 80 days, is enormous. It builds an identity, the identity I talked about in Phase 3, faster and more powerfully than occasional intense sessions ever could. So protect your daily streak above all else. Even on your worst day, do something, however small, rather than nothing. I also want to address something practical about timing and scheduling, because a plan that exists only on paper, without a real place in your daily schedule, will not survive contact with real life. I strongly recommend anchoring your 90-day practice to an existing daily habit, something you already do without fail every single day, like brushing your teeth or having your morning coffee. Attach your English practice immediately before or after this existing habit. This technique, sometimes called habit stacking, dramatically increases the likelihood that your new habit actually sticks because it borrows the automatic, unquestioned nature of the habit it is attached to. If you already brush your teeth every morning without having to think about whether to do it, and you attach your speaking practice to immediately after that, your speaking practice starts to inherit some of that same automatic quality over time. I want to give you a realistic sense of what your daily time commitment looks like across this 90-day plan, because I do not want you to feel overwhelmed by everything I have described. In Phase 1, your daily commitment is roughly 20 to 25 minutes, combining your speaking and reflection practice with focused work on your specific weaknesses. In Phase 2, your daily commitment increases slightly to around 30 minutes as you work through the reading, listening, writing, and speaking components of your topic immersion cycles. In Phase 3, your daily commitment varies depending on whether that day includes a real conversation, which might take 20 to 30 minutes, or a solo complexity stretching session, which might take 15 to 20 minutes. Across the entire 90 days, you are looking at an average daily commitment of around 25 to 30 minutes. This is significant, but it is entirely achievable for someone who is serious about reaching fluency. It is less time than most people spend scrolling through social media in a single day. The question is not whether you have the time. The question is whether you will choose to spend some of the time you already have on this goal. I want to share one more story before we move toward the end of today's message, because I think it illustrates something important about what happens after the 90 days are complete. There was a man named Faisal who completed this exact plan. By day 90, his English had transformed dramatically, just as Layla's and Tariq's had. But here is what I think is most important about his story. When day 90 arrived, Faisal did not stop. He told me that the 90 days had not just improved his English, they had built a sustainable system, a set of habits and self-awareness tools that he simply continued using in a lighter, more flexible way going forward. He continued his daily speaking practice, though sometimes shorter. He continued seeking out real conversations regularly. He continued occasionally stretching himself with complex topics. The specific structure of the 90-day plan was a scaffold, something that gave him the discipline and direction he needed during the critical period of transformation. But once that transformation happened, the scaffold could come down because the building, his actual fluent English ability, was now standing on its own, strong and self-supporting. This is what I want you to understand about this plan. 90 days is not a magic number that guarantees instant, permanent fluency the moment it ends. Language is a living thing that continues to grow throughout your life, no matter how fluent you become. But 90 days, structured intentionally the way I have described today, with a clear sequence of fixing your foundation, expanding your range, and then integrating and polishing everything into genuine confidence, is enough time to create a fundamental shift. A shift from someone who is perpetually almost fluent, stuck in that frustrating intermediate plateau, to someone who genuinely is fluent. Someone for whom English has become a tool they use rather than a subject they study. I want to leave you today with a clear, simple call to action, because everything I have shared with you means nothing if it stays only as an idea in your mind. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do 3 things. First, decide on your start date. I recommend starting tomorrow, or at the very latest within the next 2 days. Do not wait for a perfect moment, because that moment does not exist. Second, prepare your recording tool, whether it is your phone or another device, so that tomorrow morning, when you begin phase 1, day 1, you are ready to speak and record without any friction or excuse. Third, write down, even just in a simple note on your phone, the 3 phases we discussed today. Foundation in days 1 through 30, expansion in days 31 through 60, and integration in days 61 through 90, so that you have a reference point to return to throughout this journey, especially on the days when motivation is low and you need to remind yourself of the bigger picture. This plan is not easy. I will not tell you it is easy, because that would not be honest, and honesty is something I value deeply when I talk to you. There will be days during these 90 days when you feel frustrated, when progress feels invisible, when you wonder if any of this is really working. This is normal. This happens to everyone, including every single person whose fluent English you admire today. But if you commit to these 90 days fully, honestly, showing up every single day, even when it is difficult, even when it is just a few minutes on your hardest days, I believe you will arrive at day 90 as a genuinely different English speaker than the person who began on day 1. Not perfect. Nobody is perfect in any language, including their own, but fluent, confident, free, able to use English not as a wall you are constantly climbing, but as a door that is simply, finally, open. I started with nothing but a bicycle and a willingness to show up every single morning for almost 9 years just to practice. I did not have a structured 90-day plan back then. I learned through trial and error, through years of inefficient effort, because nobody had given me the kind of clear roadmap I am giving you today. You do not have to learn the way I did, slowly through years of guessing. You have right now in front of you a clear path, 90 days, 3 phases, a specific purpose for each one. The only thing left is the decision to begin. And I am asking you, my friends, to make that decision today, not next month, not when things calm down, not when you feel more ready, today. Because the version of you that speaks fluent, confident English is not some distant person you might become someday. That version of you is built, day by day, choice by choice, starting from this exact moment. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, remember this conversation. Remember phase 1, day 1. Remember that the goal is not perfection. It is simply showing up, speaking, recording, reflecting, and beginning the process of building a stronger foundation. 90 days from tomorrow, you could be a different speaker entirely. Or 90 days from tomorrow, if you do nothing, you could be exactly where you are right now, still hoping, still waiting for the right moment. The choice, as it always has been, is yours. I believe you can do this. I have seen people just like you, starting from exactly where you are starting, complete this journey, and come out the other side transformed. Your turn is now. Thank you, my friends, for spending this time with me today. I hope this plan gives you not just information, but a real, clear, actionable path forward. Print it out if you need to. Save it. Return to it throughout these 90 days. And most importantly, begin. Tomorrow morning, day 1, phase 1 begins with you, speaking, recording, and taking the very first step on a journey that ends with the fluent English you have been working toward for so long. I will see you in the next one.